Welcome back to the Plant Wisdom Collective. I'm Dr. Taryn Forrelli, Chief Science Officer at Traditional Medicinals. If you've been with us on the journey so far, you know we're exploring the deep wisdom of herbal medicine, how plants support our well-being, and how we can incorporate them into our daily lives. But not all herbs are created equal. Just like fruits and vegetables, the quality of herbs can vary widely, and that quality directly impacts the herb's benefits. Today we're going to explore what makes a high-quality herb, why sourcing matters, and how you can assess herbal quality yourself. To help us with this deep dive into the topic, I'm joined by an expert who knows this inside and out, herbalist and Traditional Medicinals head formulator, Guido Masé. Guido, I'd love to hear from your perspective why herbal quality matters. I mean, you work with not only our sourcing team, but our quality team every day. So What is that like for you?
Well, thanks, Taryn. It's good to be here. And working in formulation at Traditional Medicinals, we are creating blends to deliver herbal benefits. And it's impossible to do that if the material that we start with is not good to begin with. Like you said, when you're looking at good quality produce, you have the sense of not only how good it looks, but that directly translates to a certain extent to its nutrient content and what quality that produce represents. So similarly with medicinal plants, if I'm not confident in the quality of the material I'm working with, it becomes difficult for me to be confident in the formulas we create. I saw this also working in clinical practice. You can get, for example, some herbal material like peppermint that's beautiful and vibrant in the month of July, tastes really fragrant and aromatic. And you can compare that to peppermint that's harvested late in the season, like in October, maybe after a frost or two, it's starting to get kind of brown, doesn't smell very good. Huge differences in terms of the effects those two different types of peppermints will have in a human body. So for that reason, quality is essential and foundational. But I think one of the things that I've learned through working with our amazing sourcing team here at Traditional Medicinals is that there's something special about the places and the people where these plants are grown that sort of links them all together, and that is a foundational element of that quality itself. So herbs change throughout the seasons. Herbs can change in terms of how they're dried or processed by growers and wild collectors at the source. And unless you have someone who truly is knowledgeable, the end material you end up with can end up not being very vibrant and therefore not delivering on the promised benefits.
Right. So it matters where the herbs come from, it matters how they're grown, and it matters how they're processed and stored. And so that's really a big part of how we consider which herbs we're going to use.
That's right.
I think a great example that maybe our listeners can relate to is when they're comparing different types of wine, right? Where it's grown is a reflection of how it often tastes. And that's because the soil, the amount of sunlight, even the altitude is going to impact the chemistry. Same is true with herbs. And we find this, like you said, in things like peppermint, which is an herb that we source from a pristine location in eastern Washington, where there's this volcanic soil, there's cool nights, bright sunny days, and that all makes a big difference. The other piece is, the processing and the storing. That's something that really we have to make sure that the people that we're buying herbs from pay attention to, and we go to visit those suppliers to make sure that we see how they're doing it and that it's done properly.
Yes, Taryn, the variability in something like wine, which a lot of folks describe as the terroir, right? It's rooted in this word terra, which means earth, right? The place where those grapes, that vintage is grown. And like you said, the same thing applies to herbs. I think a really fascinating insight that I've learned from herbal medicine is that plants are a big reflection of the environment and the conditions in which they grow. Partly because they don't get to move around the way we do. And so their trick is to influence their environment by secreting different types of chemicals that go into the air, go into the soil, go into the water, go into the bodies of the animals that consume them. And this helps them sort of interface and interact with their surrounding ecologies. And in turn, different environmental conditions lead plants to produce different types of chemicals. That's how you end up with terroir, and I think it's just as true of medicinal herbs as it is of plants. And now, while I might be able to get a sense of my friend's garden echinacea or garden peppermint, this gets a little bit trickier when we're talking about buying herbs from a store, or some of the work that we do, sourcing herbs from around the planet for our medicinal tea blends. Taryn, you've gone kind of all over the world, looking at farms, working with our supply partners, seeing these herbs on the ground. On the flip side, when we receive these herbs here, what is it that we have to do to kind of make sure that the quality is there?
Yeah, thank you for that question, because it's a big part of our work every day and how we ensure that we are delivering the benefits that we say we're delivering.
That's right,
yeah. We source 120 herbs roughly from around 40 different countries, and that's a lot of material coming in. And the way that we ensure the quality is by making sure that those herbs meet what's called the pharmacopoeial standard. Now that's a mouthful, pharmacopoeia. It's actually a name for a type of reference book that sets quality standards for medicinal ingredients. Not just herbs, all kinds of medicinal ingredients, but in the case of herbs, it's going to indicate what the proper quality tests are to ensure that that material that you're receiving is of medicinal grade. Different than if you were getting herbs just for, say, enjoyment, like a beverage. So you may see a lot of teas out there that aren't making benefit claims. Well, that's fine. Herbs taste really good. And in that case, maybe they don't need to be pharmacopoeial grade.
Okay.
But for us, it's that pharmacopoeial standard. So the way it works is when we receive those herbs, we start by, first of all, identifying them with the proper test. We always want to make sure that herb, there can be look-alike herbs out there.
Of course.
So we have identification tests that are run, and then once we know it's what it's supposed to be, we start to do these sensory tests. And again, in the pharmacopoeia, it's going to say what that herb should smell like, taste like, look like. And we have experts in the lab that do that work. When you receive something like chamomile, one of the things that the pharmacopoeia says is that it's really only the flowering top of the chamomile flower that contains the medicinal compounds that you want to kind of soothe your digestion and ease your worries or support your mood. And so we get it in and we make sure it's only the flowering top. And then we're going to taste it. And chamomile actually, it has a little bit of like an apple-like flavor. In fact, the name chamomile is derived from the Greek word for earth apple. So you get those notes of apple, but then you get a little bitterness, and those characteristic sensory notes are how we know that we have pharmacopoeial grade chamomile. We also do some lab testing, again, if the pharmacopoeia says that's what we should be doing. And in the case of chamomile, we actually extract out the essential oil from the flower, and it turns into this vibrant blue oil that's rich in this compound called chamagiline, which no one needs to memorize. I just like to say it.
It's beautiful stuff.
But it is beautiful, and that's how we know that chamomile is going to do what we want it to.
So first off, there's ginger and there's ginger, right? There might be ginger that you get, at the grocery store and goes in a spice jar. That's great for cooking.
Right.
But pharmacopoeial ginger, which we use, for example, in our products, is meeting a certain set of standards similar to the ones with chamomile.
Right.
And those include sensory evaluation, but also things like chemical evaluation with the essential oil of chamomile. All of these tests sort of help give us the confidence that the herbal material is going to deliver on its benefits.
Yeah, I mean, we have to deliver a consistent product. Right?
Consistency too.
That's really, we want people to know that every time they reach for that ginger or, their throat coat tea, it's going to do the same thing that it did the last time.
I think it'd be really cool if we looked at a couple of examples.
Yeah.
You brought up peppermint a little bit earlier, and you were mentioning that peppermint comes from a particular region in the Pacific Northwest. This is a little bit of really good quality peppermint right here.
Yes.
And I'm just going to put a little right here for us to take a look at.
Yeah, this comes from our partner in Eastern Washington called Trout Lake Farm. And we have been working with them for almost 50 years, so almost our entire history. This has been a farming partner that has delivered this insanely good peppermint.
I mean, even just pouring it out of the jar, I smell this minty aroma
it.
is like in the room with us. If I were to take it and sort of crush it in my hands a little, oh, it would liberate even more aroma.
Yes, and
so potent.
And that aroma is a result of a compound called menthol.
Uh-huh.
And the menthol is the thing that within the pharmacopoeia, we know we have to deliver at least 0.9% of. But with this peppermint, in fact, we usually get over 2% menthol in it because it is so potent.
It's so potent.
And yeah, the menthol is the thing that kind of just like awakens your senses. It kind of just like, yeah, peppermint is very enlivening in that way. So yeah, that's how we know that this is good stuff.
That's fantastic. Yeah. And you know, from what I understand about Trout Lake Farm, like you were saying, the nights are cool, the days are sunny. Peppermint, if it's too hot, all the volatile oils that are rich in menthol that it makes on the surface of it just doesn't happen.
Right.
But the other piece I've found is that if someone just takes peppermint and dries it at a temperature that's way too high, or just mistreats it during drying, or doesn't put it in an airtight environment soon enough, it can also start turning brown and losing a lot of that aroma. So it sounds like our partners at Trout Lake really know what they're doing too, in terms of preserving the potency of the material they're harvesting from the field. That's
important, you know, and I would say that what Trout Lake does so well is they take care of the soil and the surrounding ecology there where they grow the plants.
So it sounds like our partners at Trout Lake Farm, not only do they have this perfect growing environment for peppermint, but they also really know what they're doing.
Absolutely. I've had the opportunity to visit them, and I have to say, standing in those fields, you smell the menthol, and these plants look so happy growing in that healthy soil that's grown organically, and then they take it in and they dry it in a way that, again, makes sure that we're preserving these critical compounds.
Well, I'd love to explore another example. Like, this makes sense to me, right? Growers who know the soil and who've spent 50 years with this herb and learned how to process it to maintain its potency makes a lot of sense. Can you give us another example, maybe from the wild? I know we work with a lot of folks who are going out into forest and field collecting medicinal plants in the wild.
Yes.
Does that same level of expertise apply here?
Absolutely. And it's even more important because we need to make sure that if we're going out into the wild, that we are applying ethical and sustainable harvesting practices.
So the supply of a wild herb could also be a consideration, because herbs growing in the wild could be wiped out if we don't pay attention.
Yes, 100%. So again, we go to meet with those wild harvesters, we see what they're doing. I think a great example of the relationship that we have, and again, how the quality comes at each stage from the harvest all the way down to the finished product, is slippery elm.
Oh, slippery elm. All right. Yeah, let's talk a little more about that.
Slippery elm is actually native to the United States, and grows in the Appalachia region. And it's one of those remedies that, it's called slippery elm for a reason. It has a compound in it, or like a group of compounds that are known as mucilage. And what they do is create that kind of coating sensation, hence the name throat coat, right? And when you're harvesting slippery elm, it is a bark. It's a bark of a tree. And what you have to do is make sure you don't take too much of it. Because again, not only will that compromise the health of the tree, it could kill it if you take too much, but also it will decrease the amount of mucilage that the tree is producing.
Oh, okay.
So it responds. Like, when we talk about plants being alive and aware, what you're doing to them actually elicits a response, right? So that's how, at least at the sourcing location, we're working, we know who's doing it. We're actually providing training to make sure that this proper way of harvesting is preserved and passed on for different generations to come. And then, when we bring it into traditional medicinals, we're going to go ahead and do that same set of pharmacopoeial evaluation tests.
And this stuff is incredible, and it's definitely the bark of a tree, as you can kind of see here, but it also has this very unique, nutty aroma that is very characteristic. And what I found in old slippery elm is that it starts to kind of just smell like cardboard. It loses that like beauty and nuttiness.
Yes.
I know one of the things that we'll do when we receive slippery elm bark is we put it in water because one of the things that these herbs that are rich in mucilage will do is they'll form, when mixed with water, they'll form almost a slime or a gel. And that's what's like so soothing and coating to tissue. And so what I did just a few minutes ago is I took some of the slippery elm bark and I added it to water. And you can see that not only is the water a little thicker, but it's forming almost this gel-like substance that is pretty slimy and gooey. That stuff, whether it's in a tea or in a lozenge, when it gets in contact with your throat, just feels lovely.
Right.
But what I heard you say, Taryn, is the folks who are harvesting this bark are contributing to that potency by the way in which they harvest the bark, the way in which they steward the trees, and the way they're protecting and preserving it as they pack it and ship it out into the world.
Absolutely. Yes, it's that reciprocity, right? It's like, yes, we are going to take, thank you, but how do we give back? We make sure that we're taking care of you, the plant.
And sustaining the herbs is crucial. But what I also heard you say a couple of times, the specialized knowledge that the farmers at Trout Lake Farm have, the specialized collecting practices and know-how, knowing where these trees are.
Exactly.
When the right time to harvest is, how to do it properly for the right slip in the bark. That traditional knowledge is not necessarily something we can take for granted.
No. I mean, that's something that we are really investing in those communities to make sure that that knowledge is preserved. Unfortunately, we are seeing fewer and fewer people that are interested in doing that kind of work. The younger generations are starting to move to the big cities. And so, we're just trying to make sure that we take care of those people and preserve this wisdom so that we can all have these wonderful plants in our lives.
I'm very glad for that.
Yes.
So one thing that has stuck in my mind, especially as sort of my herbal path has progressed, is I'm fascinated by the chemical analysis equipment that we use, for example, to assay the menthol in peppermint. Some of this research is just beautiful. And seeing the consistency as well as the variability year after year is fascinating. But if I'm watching this video now, it's like, will I ever be able to assess herbal quality as sort of a person in my kitchen, working at home? Or do I have to rely on sophisticated chemical equipment? Like, I'm not spending money to buy that type of equipment or send my herbs out to a lab for testing. Is this totally out of the reach of the average human being? Or how did we do this 1,000 years ago? How did we figure out what good quality herbs were?
Right. Well, again, that is part of the knowledge that the community would pass along to each generation. And it is very much accessible to people because it is this idea of engaging your senses. That's the best place to start when you're at home. In the same way that you're in the grocery store evaluating, is this a good apple? Same thing with the herbs. You want to look at them, look at the color. They should be vibrant, right? Unless it is meant to be something that's brown. Maybe it is brown, but...
Well, a bark makes sense.
Yeah.
But you're looking at like this hibiscus.
Exactly.
And it's beautiful purple color.
This is the chamomile with the flowering tops. So you don't see a lot of green leafy material in here. It is the yellow, flowering
Those
top.
flowers look beautiful.
Yeah.
As do these rosebuds, right?
Beautiful.
Nice, beautiful color.
Yep.
The safflower petal,
Yes.
again, deep orange, so it can lend that golden color to teas and infusions.
Lavender.
Wow.
Yeah, that beautiful purple blue hue.
And you can watch out because sometimes you see lavender that's brown.
Exactly. Oh,
And-
I've seen a lot of that.
Yeah, and you pull it out and it doesn't smell very strong.
Exactly.
So-
So these, starting with the color, and then the next is the smell. It should be, once you get to know the herbs, you're going to say, oh, that's the characteristic smell. And you might notice over time that it does fade, and sometimes it is time to get rid of herbs. Most of them do have a limited shelf life, especially if they're in a container that's being opened. Actually, one of the reasons why traditional medicinals puts each tea bag in a single kind of envelope is to make sure that the air is not getting into it, and
Sure.
that allows it to have a long shelf life. But when you're using herbs that you've harvested or you're just storing at home, it's usually no more than a year that you want
Yeah.
to keep those around.
I totally agree. You might be able to get a little longer for something like a bark,
Right.
but anything that's a flower or a leaf.
And you'll notice it. Of course, the taste is something that you'll get used to. And what else?
Yeah.
I guess if it's something that has a feeling sensation.
That's right, yeah.
Again, slippery elm, peppermint, even that cooling sensation, that's a way for you to be a good detective, a quality detective.
So it sounds like as folks are sort of exploring the world of herbs, and whether it's at a local herb shop or at your friend's garden, or if you're looking for herbal products out in the world, using your senses is a great place to start in terms of building your own confidence that the material you're working with is going to be potent and is going to be able to deliver on its benefits. This can be a little harder when you're looking at something like a capsule or a liquid extract.
Right.
Or any advice, Taryn, for folks who are going out and connecting with herbalists or herb stores or herb companies or anything like that? Like, what kind of questions to ask or what kind of things to look for?
I mean, you want to know where they come from. So I think if someone can't tell you where the herbs come from, there's a missing link in the quality story. So either it's coming from your friend, or if you're buying it at an herbal apothecary, that owner of that store should know where it comes from. So in addition to where it comes from, you can ask, are there any certifications? Again, if this is a finished product, that's something
Like a capsule or a
like
liquid.
a capsule that's marketed as a dietary supplement. There's specific requirements that the FDA has for producing a dietary supplement. So you can look to whether or not that company has adhered to those quality standards or those requirements and has any third-party certification. Organic certification is something that I think is really important if, again, you're buying herbs that aren't just grown in a local garden, because we don't want to be putting plants into our body that have been sprayed with a lot of chemicals in a way that's kind of defeating the purpose of the health-enhancing properties, and also is not helping the environment.
So it sounds like, certifications like certified organic are really important. We don't want pesticides and herbicides on our herbal material. But we can use our senses to really evaluate that quality, the vibrancy, the aromaticity of those plants. That can tell us a lot. Asking about traceability to the source. Where did those herbs come from? And trying to make sure that the people who are selling you those herbs have a sense of that, right? But we talked a lot about how herbs aren't just a reflection of the place where they're grown, but also the know-how of the people involved. Yeah. And is there any way to get a little bit of insight into how folks are being treated, what their working conditions are, or whether they're sustainably able to keep doing this herbal work? You were saying how people are getting less and less likely to continue being slippery elm bark wildcrafters. How can we get a sense of whether a purveyor of medicinal plants is really paying attention to that traditional knowledge that's almost as important as the place,
Exactly.
right?
It's so important. So fair certifications are a way to do that. Fair Wild is one that Traditional Medicinals was an early adopter of. And essentially that is a certification that is for wild harvested plants. making sure that those harvesters or collectors are paid a fair wage, and also they are getting money to invest back into their communities.
Right.
So again, it's not just, it's that whole network and trying to encourage people to stay in their communities. Fair for Life is another certification that isn't just for wild harvesting, it can be for cultivation as well. But it's a beautiful one because it not only, again, considers how the plants have been grown, but the people, the entire ecosystem, making sure that the animals around, all of that is considered. Mm-hmm. And so we are working at Traditional Medicinals to get at least 80% of our supply chain Fair for Life by 2030. So that's a big thing. And yeah, I think just knowing where they come from, the people have been treated well, is part of how we continue to do this good work in the world.
So it sounds like using your senses and asking questions are important ways that, you, as you're journeying through herbal medicine and learning more about this, these are ways in which you can sort of stand up for plants and stand up for the quality of plants in this global market in which we live, because we don't all have an herbalist living next door whose garden we can poach for medicinal plants.
One thing I want to say is I don't want people to think of herbs as resources or things that are just there for us. They are generously able to lend their chemistries to us, but they are there for the entire ecosystem. Like, we're all connected, right? And so we want to make sure that we think of them as these living beings, not just as inanimate resources that we kind of pull out without thinking about the implications of that.
That's fantastic, and I couldn't agree more. And it sounds like, some of you may have heard of these FAIR certifications for things like coffee or chocolate,
right?
But it sounds like they're available for herbs too. And that's something that we sort of value very highly and are trying to develop in the herb trade as much as we see in tea, coffee, or other sort of commodities, quote unquote.
Right. Well, in speaking of tea, specifically as a delivery format, another thing for consumers to pay attention to if they're using tea bags is, what are those tea bags made out of?
Oh, yeah.
And so we use a natural plant fiber. Again, we're taking care of the people that are growing it, called abaca. It's like a relative of the banana tree. That just makes sure that the whole thing is actually plant sourced and compostable, and giving people kind of the experience, the convenience of having properly dosed pharmacopoeia quality herbs directly in their mug.
Yeah. Taryn, you've just told us a beautiful story and really connected a lot of dots. And to me, what I'm seeing in my mind's eye is this sort of plant, people, place unit.
Yes.
That the potency of our medicinal herbs is springing from these environments where they've been growing forever. Mm-hmm. And it's, at least in part, tied to the know-how of the people who have worked those fields, who have walked those forests, and who have sort of grown up with those plants, developing the knowledge of what high quality means, how to process those herbs to maintain that quality and deliver it. And nowadays we've got, whether it's certifications like Fair for Life that pays attention to the people involved, certifications like Certified Organic that helps pay attention to the places that are involved, or the pharmacopoeial grade certifications for the actual ingredients chemistry, right, and the identity and the microscopic characteristics that we value, all come together to actually make herbal medicine deliver the benefits that we love and expect. As you sort of think about these things and as you try and incorporate them into your life, I really urge you, because again, herbal medicine is an embodied art, and we can talk about this all theoretically, but until you put some slippery elm bark in water and you watch the slime form, until you smell what peppermint smells like and really understand what vibrant menthol is like in good peppermint, it's hard to have that really deep quality sense. And so I really encourage you to go out and do a little sleuthing on your own. Try and find, some peppermint in tea bags, maybe find some at an herb store, maybe find some growing in a garden, and compare and contrast. Just
Absolutely.
try different sources and see what's up. I think that you'll maybe be surprised at what you discover, and you're going to start building your sort of internal quality book.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an intuitive thing. I would say we as human beings are designed to know
Right.
whether a plant is good or not. You know, it's kind of like that. It's designed that we want the good stuff. So when we can see it, we can identify it, we can feel it. Our bodies kind of give us that yes.
That's awesome. And so, again, start really simple.
Simply.
It's not like you have to go read the pharmacopoeial standards for all of the herbs that are here, but find one and try a few different kinds. Write this down, make notes,
Yeah.
and build that sort of internal sense that, like you said, we're all born with the ability to do. And if you find anything that blows your mind, or you want to share photos, or a little bit of a write-up of what you experienced when you tried these different kinds of peppermints, please share it with us at the Plant Wisdom Collective. I can't wait to hear what you've discovered. If you have any questions or weird things that came up, I'd love to see that even more. So share it with us so we can all get the benefit of exploring different types of herbs and the quality they have around them. I think if you can share with the group, other students and people who are interested will learn a lot from your story, and hopefully vice versa. You'll get some great info from other folks in the Plant Wisdom Collective.
Thank you, Guido. It was so fun to talk about quality here today. It's something that is near and dear to my heart, yours as well. And I hope that everyone listening is able to take away a little bit of wisdom to embody and apply in their lives.
So true. We will see you next time. Remember, we do better with plants by our side, and keep your heart open to the green world.